The concern I have, though, is you say you're anti-authoritarian. Honest to God, I believe you. But I think that the right is very effective at using pleas towards moderation and towards like open discourse and dialogue as ways of paving the road towards like annihilation effectively. And it means that even if you're anti-authoritarian ideologically, politically, you end up serving their interests. And that would be my concern here, right?
Sure, and I can understand that. I really don't think that the American right is that authoritarian. I mean, when you hear the campaign messages of right-wing politicians and the fundamental, what they pass as well. I mean, it's about making the government smaller in terms of spending. You don't hear about any of that on the leftist side, the Democratic side.
Because they don't really do that, though.
And I'd say they do. I mean,
they vote
when
for
you
the
look at the
exact same
states of
military budget. The only stuff they really want to deregulate is like Wall Street regulation and like EPA regulation, so their oil and gas cronies can continue to pollute the environment and make lots of money. Outside of that, they don't really ever challenge like the state, like at all, really. But in terms of authoritarianism, like it's getting really bad out there. Donald Trump literally said that we should suspend the Constitution and make him leader like now. Ron DeSantis recently said that for death penalty trials, you shouldn't need all 12 jurors. Only 8 out of 12 should be necessary to sentence a person to death. The prevailing conservative constitutional interpretation doctrine is shifting over towards paternalistic constitutionalism, which is essentially, and there have been articles on this, the idea that the Constitution's writings are irrelevant and you should just interpret it in whatever way allows you to get your political agenda done. When Barr, General Attorney Barr, was in charge back under Trump, he tried to use sedition charges to do mass arrests of BLM protesters, which would have numbered in the tens or hundreds of thousands of people being charged with sedition there. Donald Trump just today put out a little blurb, which I saw a section of on Twitter, in which he said that he wanted to defund any hospitals which in any way provided trans healthcare, and that he wanted to get rid of Biden's guidelines on trans healthcare's accessibility to Medicare and Medicaid. Like everything, like on every line, everything they do and say is, we will use the state to punish you. There's not a hint of anti-authoritarianism to their messaging outside of like, yeah, we'll defund the government, which they never do. They never actually do that, you know?
Well, I'll start here. First off, Trump is obviously authoritarian. I'm not a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form. But in terms of the broader right-wing, conservative positions, I mean, the rights that I consider fundamental to anti-authoritarianism are all positions that are held very strongly by the right and at best very weakly by the left.
Oh, like what?
And I was going to say, I'll give an example here. I'd say the right to freedom of speech is something that you'll hear conservative pundits hold as core values, while you'll see the left at least flirt with the idea of banning hate speech and that sort of thing.
So this is what I mean when I say like you're vulnerable to their rhetoric. Donald Trump wanted to open up libel and slander laws so he could sue newspapers for reporting accurately on the stuff that he said. We literally just had a discussion about teachers facing felony charges if they didn't submit their school curriculums to a state whitelist. Freedom of speech involves stuff said in the classroom too. That's where speech is often most important, after all, because the purpose of speech is to influence other people. Education is a big part of that. Conservatives are incredibly pro-cop. They were anti-BLM. Yes. They're anti public demonstration broadly. They have a tendency to work off on that when they can. Like these protesters are all anti-American thugs, that kind of stuff. They
only when they are. Kidding.
Right. Well, regardless of what they say, you realize that when they talk about being pro freedom of speech, what they're really talking about is like, let these Nazis back on Twitter, right? In what meaningful, legislative ways are they pro freedom of speech?
When you look at the bills that are attempting to curtail freedom of speech, where my mind goes is
like what?
Hate speech laws. That's the number.
What hate speech laws?
I don't follow Congress closely enough to know about every proposed bill, but I think we can agree that it's a commonly proposed idea on the left.
No, You have heard that
No,
from conservatives. There is literally no fronted, politically supported hate speech bill that's been pushed on a federal level, and I'm unaware of any on a state level.
it's a major push within the left, though.
No, you're
I've heard,
you've
my
heard
friends that are leftists
you've
that
heard from
would
leftists.
support it.
It's this isn't a real thing. The things I just said about the Republicans are
Okay.
being done by their people in power. There is no push right now for hate speech laws. There just isn't.
I mean, yeah, again, I'm not going to go into defending Trump because I never would support him, but for a lot of reasons, and that includes prior to, the election fraud stuff, which, yeah, anyway. Yeah, so AOC did push for hate speech laws. She tweeted about it, which is a very minor form of pushing.
Well, what
But the
specific?
sentiment is.
Just keep in mind
I have to run this.
we're comparing this right now to like Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis are both active authoritarians, and they're the two presidential candidates for the GOP. So so in terms of like anti-free speech, you have to remember you have to come up with something better than the leaders of the GOP are authoritarians who completely disrespect democracy and don't care about freedom. Like it's a very high bar to pass. It's also
Sure.
not one you'll be able to pass. I mean, you can look stuff up, but like, if I knew, I knew, right?
It's
It's a pretty tough line.
Yeah, I mean, AOC did tweet saying, for those who believe in free speech, whose free speech do you believe in? Because some folks using speech to defend racism are also supporting folks, Yeah, so
That's true. A lot. Usually, what Republicans will do is they won't actively defend racism or Nazism. They'll defend the free speech to say it. This is like a really common thing. If you take a look at so this is really funny, and I know this because this happened like right around the time I started my channel. Okay, all of the neo-Nazis and alt-righters online. I'm talking about like large accounts, small accounts, a ton of people, a ton of people. Okay, all these people, they want to gas the Jews. They want to kill all the black and brown people in the country. They're full on far right. And then all of a sudden, all of these guys, Richard Spencer, Nick Fuentes, they all become free speech warriors. All of them out of nowhere are like, yeah, we are very concerned with the anti-free speech. Keep in mind, these people are all advocating politically for the opposite of free speech. They want the furthest form of authoritarianism possible by a government. But all of a sudden, they're free speech warriors. And the reason for that was because they identified correctly that there was an avenue they could exploit. The conservative bias of like, we won't defend the idea, we'll just defend your right to say it, and not do the same thing when the left wing has something that I disagree with that I want to say. You know what I mean?
yeah, and I mean, certainly in the case of like Nick Fuentes and all that, but I've got a question. Would you support the right of free speech for those same people you described? The people, Nazis, basically.
I support their First Amendment rights, absolutely. I don't think they should be arrested for saying what they say.
Okay, well, in that case, we definitely agree, but I think there are a lot on the left who would not support that. Who would say we need hate speech laws.
Even if the left was
Like, do you want me
successful
to-
in pushing something like that, an anti-hate speech law that targeted neo-Nazis is so much better than all the stuff on the right that actually has happened. Right now we're like comparing a hypothetical, maybe kind of bad thing to an actual currently developing encroach of fascism. There's such a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, there's not an active hate speech law on the books in America, but there certainly is in Canada. There's a bill that, quote, prohibits willful promotion of hatred and the public incitement of hatred,
Okay,
which would violate the First Amendment. And I think that
but
it's not a far reach to say the American left would support the same thing.
it's Canada. They don't have a First Amendment.
Yeah, that is true. But okay, you wanted an example of on the books, and I don't think there is a proposed law being pushed in Congress right now.
The Republicans are just very aggressively like anti-freedom right now. The free speech stuff is just something they scream about because they want like a more optics friendly way of defending the indefensibly far right people who support them, like the Steve Bannon type stuff, like Alex Jones. Alex Jones just touts Nazism on his channel, and then Alex Jones gets within the bounds of the law, sued for defamation in a fashion which I think is very okay, very morally fine. And then all of a sudden, the right is like, yeah, the free speech of Alex Jones is being targeted. Well, how? I mean, he he has a First Amendment right to say stuff, but he's also susceptible to libel and defamation laws. They don't really care about free speech. They just care about having excuses to defend the
Okay.
people who promote the values they care about.
I mean, I definitely think you're more aware of the Alex Jones situation than I am because I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. But my understanding is that he was sued for defamation for the Sandy Hook situation where he said the shooting wasn't real, right?
Yeah, along with quite a lot there. Yeah,
Yeah. So, in my opinion, that would fall under freedom of speech.
defamation and
You-
libel are laws that we have. He didn't just say
Sure.
it. We're talking about like a targeted, multi-years long effort to profit off of knowingly lying about people, which is defamation.
Okay. I- Yeah, I mean, I'm not, once again, I'm not too familiar with the Alex Jones situation,
It got pretty bad.
but that sounds right. Yeah, I mean, it's Alex Jones, so I'm not going to doubt how crazy he got. Um, I have no doubt that he went completely off the wagon on that. But another form